Moonlighting at Phil's Fat Boy Burgers, Lucy's disastrous debut as a Carhop. The transition from the ordered fluorescent-lit corridors of the Western Bank to the neon-drenched grease-scented chaos of Phil's Fat Boy Burgers constitutes one of the most effective environmental contrasts in the entire composite narrative. Lucy Carmichael, still carrying the residual guilt of the destroyed portable television and the looming necessity of financial restitution, arrives at her new nocturnal workplace with the brittle optimism that has always been her most dangerous and most endearing quality. The help wanted advertisement had promised no experience necessary and salary plus tips, two phrases that in Lucy's hopeful reading translated into immediate solvency. What the advertisement had not prepared her for, and what the audience immediately anticipates with delighted dread, is the precise nature of the physical and hierarchical demands of Carhop work in a busy drive-in during the dusk, mid to late 1960s. Lucille Ball's entrance into this new comic arena is a study in the collision between middle-class secretary manners and the rough-and-tumble democracy of the American roadside eatery. The first order she attempts to deliver is already a disaster in miniature. "Here, sir, now this isn't what we ordered." The customer's complaint is delivered with the weary impatience of a man who has waited too long and received the wrong food. Lucy's immediate, fluttering apology, "No, oh please, sir, please," reveals the secretary, still inhabiting the Carhop's uniform. She has not yet learned the professional detachment required to absorb criticism without personal collapse. When the manager appears, the scene expands into a perfect miniature of workplace hierarchy under stress. "Can I help you? I'm the manager." "Now what is wrong?" The manager's voice carries the practiced authority of a man who has mediated 1,000 such complaints and has already begun to regret his latest hiring decision. The customer's litany of grievances is delivered with accumulating force: half an hour's wait, the wrong order, and the final unforgivable offense of food spilled across the car. Lucy's physical response to this cascade of failure is pure. Ball shoulders, slightly hunched hands, fluttering in useless gestures of remediation, eyes wide with the particular panic of someone who knows she is the sole author of the catastrophe. The manager's devastating assessment, "You haven't done anything right since you've been here," is followed by one of the episode's sharpest verbal gags: "That's what I get for hiring a topless waitress." Lucy's uncomprehending "What do you mean topless?" and the manager's deadpan clarification, "No head," constitute a perfect comic couplet. The joke is crude by modern standards, yet within the context of 1960s television comedy it lands with the force of pure character revelation. The manager sees Lucy not as a person but as a walking absence of competence, a headless body performing the motions of service without the animating intelligence required to complete them. The subsequent instruction to clean the mess and retrieve the correct order is delivered with the exhausted resignation of a man who already knows the evening will only deteriorate further. The help we get nowadays is muttered as both complaint and philosophical observation, situating the scene within the broader cultural conversation of the period about declining standards of service and the unreliability of the temporary labor force. Lucy's promise to straighten everything out and her repeated assurances of "right away, sir, right away," are delivered with the frantic energy of someone trying to outrun her own incompetence. Ball's physical comedy in these moments is particularly rich, the hurried steps that somehow still manage to look clumsy. The tray held at an angle that guarantees further spillage, the bright brittle smile that never quite reaches the eyes. When Lucy finally returns with the corrected order and an apology for the long wait, the customer's response provides one of the episode's most unexpectedly tender comic beats. "Lady, you are amazing. My doctor's been trying to get me to diet for 10 years and you succeeded in one night." The line is a masterpiece of backhanded compliment, transforming Lucy's culinary failure into an accidental triumph of public health. Ball's reaction, equal parts mortification and reluctant amusement, allows the audience to laugh at the situation while still feeling a measure of protective affection for the character. The subsequent offer of help from a second customer, a young man who will soon be identified as Tommy Watkins, introduces the first genuine note of human kindness into the drive-in's harsh ecology. His observation that Lucy reminds him of someone very close to me and the eventual revelation that the someone is his mother create a moment of unexpected warmth. The laughter that follows "No My Mother Ha Ha Ha" is shared between character and audience, a brief island of connection in the surrounding sea of professional failure. The telephone conversation with Mary Jane that follows provides necessary exposition while deepening the portrait of Lucy's mounting desperation. "I got the job. I worked till 5 this morning." The admission of the brutal hours is delivered with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The description of the manager as an impostered Simon Leaguer, a delightful malapropism for a poster of Simon Legree, reveals Lucy's tendency to process workplace tyranny through the lens of familiar cultural references. The mention of the nice kid who helped her all night plants the seed for the Tommy Watkins subplot that will soon dominate the narrative. Most importantly, the conversation establishes the impossible double shift that Lucy has now committed herself to. A full day at the bank followed by another night of Carhop chaos. Her decision to take no sleep pills, wake-up pills, is both practical and ominous, signaling that the body will eventually rebel against the demands being placed upon it. The subsequent office sequence in which Lucy attempts to function under the influence of these chemical stimulants is a masterclass in the comedy of chemical enhancement. Mooney's discovery of her dozing at the desk produces one of Gail Gordon's finest slow burn reactions. "I thought when I loaned your television set you'd do your sleeping at home instead of here in the office." The line is delivered with the precise calibration of a man who has been proven right against his will and takes no pleasure in the confirmation. Lucy's helpless yawning and her inability to control her own fatigue create a physical comedy sequence that is both funny and faintly alarming. When Mooney forces the wake-up pills upon her, "Don't argue with me, take them, here's some water, swallow them down," the scene acquires a strangely parental quality. Mooney is not merely an employer enforcing productivity. He is a frustrated guardian attempting to keep his wayward charge functional. Ball's performance of the reluctant swallowing, the forced smile of compliance, and the subsequent promise that in a few minutes "I'll be my usual self again" is layered with the knowledge that her usual self is precisely the chaotic force Mooney both needs and dreads. The return to Phil's Fat Boy Burgers for the second night escalates the physical comedy to new heights of controlled disaster. The 45-minute wait for an order, the delivery of a cheeseburger and malt to the wrong customer, the subsequent frantic reassignment of the food, and the inevitable collision that produces yet another cascade of broken dishes, form a sequence of escalating farce that Ball executes with the precision of a seasoned acrobat. The manager's accumulating fury reaches its verbal peak with the declaration that Lucy already holds the West Coast record for broken dishes after only 2 nights of employment. The financial reality of the situation is underscored with brutal clarity. "I'm sorry, deduct it from my salary." "What salary aren't you paying?" "You already owe me $26, now clean up that mess." The economic powerlessness of the temporary worker is laid bare without sentimentality or preaching. Lucy is not merely incompetent, she is trapped in a system that extracts labor while withholding compensation, a quiet satirical observation that gives the slapstick its underlying edge. The introduction of Tommy Watkins as a regular customer provides the first sustained note of human connection within the drive-in's transactional environment. His polite patience, his clear affection for Lucy's chaotic energy, and his willingness to wait without complaint stand in sharp contrast to the manager's escalating hostility and the other customer's irritation. When Lucy takes his order, a rare hamburger with everything on it and a Fat Boy Mal, the interaction is marked by a warmth that feels almost domestic. Ball's performance softens noticeably in these moments. The frantic edge that characterizes her interactions with the manager and the impatient customers gives way to something gentler and more reciprocal. The audience is invited to see Tommy not merely as a plot device but as a rare instance of the world meeting Lucy's chaos with patience rather than condemnation. The physical comedy of the first step, "Mr. Burton, I told you about that first step, it's a dilly," and the subsequent fall provide another showcase for Ball's fearless commitment to bodily humor. The repeated instructions to get up, come on, and the tangled limbs of the fallen customer create a visual image of pure farce. Yet even in the midst of this physical chaos, the writing maintains its careful attention to character. Lucy's concern is genuine. Her attempts to help are sincere even when they exacerbate the problem. This combination of good intention and practical disaster remains the defining engine of her comedy, and nowhere is it more purely expressed than in these early sequences at the drive-in. By the time the second night's shift has fully descended into broken dishes, unpaid wages and mounting managerial rage, the audience understands that Lucy's moonlighting experiment is unsustainable. The financial goal that drove her to the job, the replacement of Mooney's destroyed television, has been completely obscured by the immediate overwhelming demands of survival within the drive-in's hostile ecosystem. The comedy arises not from Lucy's failure to perform the job adequately, but from the profound mismatch between her essential nature and the requirements of the role. She is too emotionally reactive, too physically clumsy under pressure, too fundamentally unsuited to the rapid impersonal efficiency that Carhop work demands. Yet the same qualities that make her a disastrous employee make her a magnetic comic presence. The audience does not wish for her to succeed at the job. The audience wishes for the job to somehow accommodate the glorious impossibility of Lucy Carmichael. In the broader context of the Lucy Show's exploration of women's labor in the 1960s, these sequences at Phil's Fatboy Burgers carry a quiet but persistent critical charge. The drive-in represents a particular form of low-status, high-visibility service work that was often filled by women and young people with few other economic options. The manager's casual cruelty, the customer's impatience, the systematic withholding of wages, and the physical toll of the work are all presented without heavy-handed commentary. Yet the cumulative effect is a clear-eyed portrait of precarious employment. Lucy's decision to quit rather than abandon Tommy Watkins in his moment of need will soon elevate the narrative from pure workplace farce into something more morally complex, but even before that turning point, the drive-in sequences have already established the human cost of Lucy's desperate attempt to make restitution for a broken television set. The genius of these scenes lies in their refusal to separate the ridiculous from the real. Every spilled tray, every wrong order, every broken dish is simultaneously a classic piece of physical comedy and a small, precise observation about the nature of service work. The vulnerability of the temporary employee and the particular volontaristic forms of resilience required of women navigating the economic margins of mid-century American life. Lucille Ball's performance holds all of these layers in perfect balance, never allowing the slapstick to erase the character's essential dignity and never allowing the dignity to undercut the glorious catastrophic comedy of a woman completely out of her depth and somehow still swimming.